I also want to kind of do a dual attention to a tweets. One is from our comrade Nick, also known as Socialist
Nice.
MMA,
Love Nick.
and this is going to be pertaining to yours as well.
Awesome.
So I'm going to use this as a jumping off point. Oops, no, wait,
Thanks for
yeah.
all the love in the comments too, everyone. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Love and appreciate you all.
Mm-hmm. So Nick says mainstream political discourse right now let me see. Mainstream political discourse right now is desperately trying to distract you from the active class war that the ruling class is waging right now. That should be the main topic of discussion. Fuck political theater. Billionaires are stealing wealth from us with impunity. And that actually leads to a tweet that you have put out, which I want to also show. Let me see. Yes. And you said, I've been unemployed for the past 2 years. I owe $12,000 in federal taxes on unemployment benefits, while these billionaire scumbags don't pay a dime. These oligarchs, the IRS, and both corrupt capitalist political parties can all be eat a bag of dirty dicks, which I completely agree.
Yes.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Now, because I shared that, I want to present this as well because there is a reason why you say this, and this needs to be talked about. This is from ProPublica,
Mm-hmm.
and this says the secret IRS files trove of never before seen records reveal how the wealthiest avoid income tax. And it says ProPublica has obtained a vast cache of IRS information showing how billionaires like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Warren Buffett paid little in income tax compared to their massive wealth, sometimes even nothing. Um, and I'm going to scroll this down, and I want to get your opinions on this and your thoughts. But this is the ultra wealthy by the numbers, wealth, income, and taxes for four of the richest people in the country from 2014 to 2018. And it shows how much they have in wealth, the income they reported, the taxes paid, but the actual true tax rate after they have gotten their accountants and lawyers to go through all the loopholes. Um, and as you can see, Warren Buffett, the same guy who virtue signaled and said, "Oh, we actually need to pay more in taxes." Yeah, people, he was virtue signaling bullshit to you because his true tax rate is 0.10%. Kamali, go.
Yeah. So, I mean, this should enrage anyone looking at this. This means that working class people, Jeff Bezos, he paid nothing in federal income taxes, both in 2007 and 2011. This is the wealthiest, him and Elon Musk keep going back and forth. And there's, I think, one other person just, jumped the line too, as being the wealthiest people in the entire world. And they are paying nothing in federal taxes. And even worse than that, they then take their money and they use it to influence our political system. Look at what Amazon has been doing to Shama Sawant, and what Jeff Bezos' company there is doing to Shama Sawant in Washington. It's city councilor in Seattle, and they're running a recall campaign against her. And they donated $1 million against her to opponents running against her in our last election. So not only are these people not paying anything into taxes to help fund the government, but then they turn around and they use all that money that they save from not having to pay taxes to then corrupt our political system. And so it should outrage anyone that a working class person, somebody that is, this 14-year-old kid working at Burger King probably paid, he paid more in federal taxes than, billionaire Jeff Bezos, and we're supposed to somehow look at that as some, to applaud this or something. So yeah, this is, and it's the way that they do it that's so insidious too. I mean, they use this thing where they pretend as if, they like to use it for PR, where they say, oh, I'm only gonna collect $1 in income for this year. I'm only going to take $1 in wages for this year. So they'll say, I'm taking $1, I'm taking no pay for my my pay for the year. But what they do then is they then, because they don't have to report, that money doesn't get reported as income. They don't have to take that as income, and that income would be taxed at around a 30% rate. When your income that you get, payroll income, payroll taxes are about 35% for the average worker. So what they do is then they don't pay that, and instead they just they buy properties, and as long as they're not making any money, as long as they're not selling anything, then they don't have to pay any taxes, because when they sell stuff, they have to pay on that because that's considered income. So they don't sell anything, they simply buy up all these different things, and what they do is they then borrow money from these big banks. They are then able to borrow millions of dollars against their holdings, right? So they say, look at all this stock I own, and most of their income is coming in capital gains, which are taxed at less than half the rate of the work that we do when we're actually out there physically laboring for a company. And so they then take that money that they borrowed, and the banks go to them and they say, well, you're so wealthy, you're so rich, and you have all these assets, so we're actually going to lend to you at a lower rate than we lend to your average citizen. And so they will come in and they'll say, we'll lend you $10 million at a rate of about 3%, instead of you having to take a $10 million payroll income from your job and then having to pay 30% on that $10 million. You can take $10 million from us, just borrow it from our bank, and you'll only have to pay 3% tax on that. So and ProPublica reported all of this. That is an amazing article out of ProPublica, and they said there's more data. They plan to release more of this data in the coming days, weeks, and months. And so I feel like there's even more shoes to drop in this argument. But this is just insidious behavior from the wealthiest people in our country and around the world. And they have all these types of tax dodges and loopholes that they use, that only if you can afford the most expensive lawyers in the country could you ever gain the same benefits. And here you have people on unemployment being taxed on unemployment. Like, for one, why the hell are we taxing unemployment? Some states don't tax employment. Here in Massachusetts, they tax employment. It's absolutely absurd to me for you, the government, to give me money and then say, oh, but now we're going to need to take some back from you. Just give me what you're going to give me in the end. Then don't take the taxes out to begin with. You can't give desperate people the choice of whether or not to take taxes out of that money. When you're struggling and you're up against it and you're making a decision, do I have enough money to eat? You're going to take every dollar you can get, even if it means getting hit with again, like I did, a $12,000 bill at the end of the year for it. And so it's just this broken, and it's not even a broken system. It's the wrong way to frame it, really. This system is designed, it's working exactly as it's designed. And that's why we need fundamental system change. We have to change the system because this is how it operates. And until we change the actual system, it's going to continue to operate as such. So that's especially painful, I think.
Yeah. And, for people who say that, oh, we don't need to raise taxes on the wealthy because they're the job creators. It's like, how many jobs are they actually creating while only paying 1/10 of 1% of their actual wealth? And the thing is that they have more money to do with, in multiple lifetimes.
Yeah.
And so I have no sympathy for any of these people.
Yes, not one bit.
Yeah. And so I think, honestly, you know, and even from a modern monetary theory, you don't have to actually increase taxes on them.
Yeah.
But I say do it anyway because billionaires should not even exist.
Yes, yes.
You know,
Let's not forget what the marginal tax rate was under FDR and Lyndon B. Johnson. No like social. These are no socialists by any stretch of the imagination, right?
no.
And look at what the marginal tax rate was under them, under Dwight Eisenhower. Look at what the marginal tax rate was under Dwight Eisenhower and FDR. It literally hit 94%, and right now it's at, we're talking about raising it. Joe Biden has proposed raising it up to 25%. All right. And so it's like, when we're talking about these marginal tax rates, we're not even in the atmosphere. We're not even in the vicinity of what it should be at this stage, and that was in a response to crises like a world war. And we're now facing crises like economic crisis, Great Depression. That was in response to Great Depression and World War. Now we have another, Great Recession or Great Depression that we're under right now, mass unemployment and a public health crisis, a global pandemic. And this is the time that we need to respond by taxing the hell out of the wealthy. And the reality, like you said, James, we don't even need to raise the taxes. We absolutely should, but we just need to start to enforce the tax code that we have now, and to actually take the taxes and let the effective tax rate match the actual tax rate.
It's funny. This is going to sound kind of weird. And so, you guys in the comments, I'm just speculating. I'm not actually totally serious about this, but it's just an idea I'm just throwing out there. Especially in a black household, you have what we call house rules, right? So the person who pays the most bills has the most say in the house. So it's like, wait a minute, if you guys really want to have the most say in the government, then pay more of the bills. Pay more in taxes and you guys can have a greater say. I mean, that's not necessarily democratic, but even from that aspect, it's like, okay, you guys are paying the least, so therefore you guys actually have the least amount of say in the entire U.S. economy. So
Yeah,
you guys shouldn't even have much of a say to say anything at all, because who pays the
absolutely.
majority of the taxes? Is those of us who are working class. I mean, working Americans pay most of the taxes. So therefore, any of the rich honestly need to sit down and shut the fuck up. They shouldn't even have
Yes.
a say. They shouldn't even have the phone numbers to any of the politicians.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? So, truth be told, even from that aspect, they don't deserve to have anything to say. But, of course, we want it to be democratic, so it's one person, one vote, and their money should not equal speech whatsoever.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that in capitalist institutions and capitalist enterprises, the actual rule is not one person, one vote. It's one share, one vote, right?
Yeah.
And so it's essentially operates as like $1, one vote, one share, one vote. And so it's in no way democratic, these these capitalist enterprises. And I know that because, again, I developed one. I got to decide how many shares there were, and I got to decide how many shares everyone had. And I had millions of shares, and my co-founders had millions of shares. And if we had a new employee come in, they were telling us to give them thousands of shares versus our millions of shares. So that's millions of votes. Every share you get is one vote that you get in a capitalist enterprise, truly. And so that, if and most people that own shares in a company, you own what, like 2 shares of, like, some little, you can't, like, two, like, I forget what like a share of like Amazon right now is like hundreds of dollars or something. You can barely own 1 or 2 shares of these things. Jeff Bezos has millions of shares of Amazon stock. So the idea that you would ever have an equal say is completely unfounded. And so, yeah, I just, we don't have a system of one person, one vote by any stretch of the imagination.